Thank you for downloading this podcast from the British Theatre Guide. For more information about British Theatre Guide, please visit britishtheatreguide.info. Two of the hottest tickets in the 2013 Manchester International Festival are Macbeth in a deconsecrated church somewhere in the centre of Manchester, which sees the return to the stage of Kenneth Branagh in the title role, in a production directed by Rob Ashford and also starring Alex Kingston as Lady Macbeth, plus The Machine by Matt Charman, directed by Salford-born Josie Rourke, who is artistic director of the Donmar Warehouse in London, but this is her debut as a director in Manchester. I've recently spoken to actors from both of these productions, and first of all, I spoke to Alexander Vlahos in a break from rehearsals just before he came to Manchester. You'll hear some of the sound effects in the background, who is playing Malcolm in Macbeth, but will be better known to TV viewers as Mordred from the TV series Merlin. And I started by asking Alexander how he came to be involved with the production in the first place.
Well, I sort of came off the back of doing Merlin for 8 months in Cardiff, and I spent a lot of last year doing a lot of telework, which was fun and enjoyable, but it got to the point where I think I needed a break, so I took a holiday for about 2 months, and came back and did that typical thing of sort of speaking to my agent, saying what's happening, what sort of works on the go, and Anne McNulty, who's casting for Macbeth, wanted to bring me in for Malcolm. So I auditioned in the sort of way that everyone auditions for stuff, I guess, and met with Rob first of all and Anne, and read a couple of scenes from Malcolm, from Macbeth, and then had a recall. I think it was like the next day. And found out, I think, probably the next day after that. So it was quite a quick process into being part of the company, I guess. But yeah, just a sort of bog standard way, nothing very exciting.
Yeah, but you've gone from Mordred, who is somebody who seems to be seeking power from the king, to Malcolm, who seems to be doing the same sort of thing, isn't he?
I know, it's weird, isn't it? Because to be fair, I thought that I was making a sort of a brave, different choice in my character choices. My next step after doing Mordred and Merlin, and then having been doing the play, sort of thinking, oh no, wait, there's quite a lot of similarities in what I'm doing here. They ring true to both of them, but that can only help you, I guess, having had some experience. They're very different things. The world of Camelot to 11th century Scotland is a massive jump, but the character traits and the wants and desires of the character are all pretty much there, and it's but Malcolm's a really brilliant part to play. I get the rightful heir of Scotland. It's an amazing England scene, and I'm really enjoying rehearsals actually.
And you get the big closing speech as well, don't you?
I know. I got no pressure, right? No, it's weird. It's that thing in your head about thinking, I better hurry up with this because people want to get out, and having the sort of the love and care from Rob and Ken to say, no, you take your time, don't worry about that. People won't be packing up their bags quite as quickly as you think they will be.
Not for a big, high-profile production like this, because it really is quite a big production to be in, isn't it?
Oh yes, it is, and it's amazing. And all the people I talk to, their immediate default answer after I told them what I'm doing or what we're doing is that, I'll catch it when it goes to London, I'll catch it when it goes to the West End. And you're just, your answer is, well, no, you won't. It's literally, we're doing it for two and a bit weeks, and it's done. And I think that's what's great about the Manchester International Festival, as well as what's great about what we're doing, is that it's the exclusivity of the whole thing, that whole secret location, and and the fact that Ken's coming back to stage to do this, the profile already is quite high, but I guess that's the joy of it, of doing a show like this, is that you're not bogged down with a 1.5-year contract in the West End. You're rehearsing for 6 weeks or 5 weeks, and it'll be over within 2 weeks after that, and I think we're all kind of reveling in that luxury, not thinking of it as more of a flaw, but thinking of it as more as a bonus, really.
Now, you said it's in a secret location, so I don't know the details of the place you're at, but we do know it's in a church, and you say you've been rehearsing in a church. What does that lend to the production, do you think?
Oh, so much. Unbelievable amounts. The idea that we're doing this play, the Scottish play, in a church, in a deconstructed church in Manchester, and even rehearsing in a church in London, it's, even though it's a rehearsal room, even though we're rehearsing, it's still has been a place of worship, The walls are filled with history, the walls are filled with countless years of prayer and thought, and, there has been a minister or a priest on the pulpit talking to and giving a sermon. That's undeniable. So when we're doing this play, the history of where we're rehearsing, and probably even more so when we go up to Manchester, will hopefully influence the play completely, I think. And I think that's what we're trying to do, is to pull on the good and evil aspects of the play and pin them down with the good and evil aspects of religion and, and paganism and stuff like that.
So you do feel some sort of a reverence to the building while you're acting in it, do you? Yes,
of course. Well, I think it has to influence you, and that's what's another luxury about this job, is that, we're not just rehearsing in a rehearsal room. We're not just rehearsing in, say, the Jerwood space, where it's just a big rehearsal room and, countless people and directors and plays and companies have gone through it. It's quite a unique experience even to be rehearsing in a church, let alone the idea of performing in one. So, yeah, it has to influence the work, I think, and that's what's fun about it. It's definitely not a hindrance. It's there to be used, and I think that's what we're doing. We're sort of capitalising on that location. Oh, there you go. There's a bit of sound effects. I told you it would happen.
So you're actually still rehearsing in London at the moment. Have you been to the location in Manchester yet?
No, we haven't. No, we travel up in a week's time on Tuesday, and we'll get to see it. So yeah, no, the secrecy of the location is still a secret to us, which is bizarre, because when that's what's different about this job compared to any other, is that when you take on the work, you know where you're going. I did Hamlet with John Sim up in Sheffield Crucible, and we knew that we were going to the Crucible, and you knew what it looked like, and you knew where the audience were, and you knew how it was going to play, and the rehearsal room didn't fit to the Crucible standards, but you had that was always going to be the plan, and here it's different, you're going up, and even for the company to not know, bang, 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 to not know where we're going is weird. It's a very weird experience.
But there are a couple of slightly different performances. Well, I think it's all in one performance, isn't it? Where you're being broadcast to a big screen outside, and also you're being broadcast to cinemas as well, aren't you, as well? Yeah,
initially the plan was just to do the show relay, because obviously it's a very limited audience. We're not doing it to 1,000 people in the Olivier. We're doing it to, a handful of people. And because of the short legacy of the short run of the play, the relay idea came in quite quickly, and that was always going to be a sort of fun thing, having to rehearse for cameras. And I think it was the first day. I think it was just after we did the read-through. Ken himself and Rob announced that as well as doing the show relay, the relay will actually be part of National Theatre Live, which garnered a massive response from the whole company. I think that was an amazing thing, because my parents can't even come up and see the show. It's that, it's that exclusive. So they're going to go to Cineworld in Cardiff and watch it at the same time, which is a baffling thing. I've never been involved in an NT Live, so it adds an extra level of detail to the work, I guess. We're already considering in our work, in our rehearsal periods, how we garner some stuff towards camera, and so that's an interesting approach. Mixing the two together, bleeding the TV work and the theatrical work together.
So I've got to ask you, what's it been like working with Kenneth Branagh on his return to the stage?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, I was a little bit daunted at first. I was incredibly daunted and nervous about, not about him, but about working with him on, I guess, his return to the stage. But that fear sort of went very quickly, very, very quickly. He's as an absolute gentleman, a professional, what you expect really, and someone who has such a handle on text and verse. His use of language and dexterity of that is insane, and I think we're all using the opportunity when we're not in scenes to come into rehearsals to watch him work. and even now you can see, it's not just, I say this, but it's not just Ken, it's, we've got John Shrapnel playing Duncan and Alex Kingston playing Lady M, an amazing cast, Ray Fearon playing Macduff, so it's not just Ken taking the whole brunt of the play, but it's a joy, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be part of it. It's just, it's one of them pinch me, is this real moments. You'll be doing a scene opposite him, and then suddenly he'll just come out of the scene because obviously, he's co-directing as well. So we'll be doing a scene together, and then he'll just sort of not say his next line and come over and give you a note, and you just think, wow, this is weird. And you have them moments where you're just looking at him and you're delivering your lines, and Shakespeare, you're delivering my Malcolm to his Macbeth, and you just then have that moment of like that washes over you, and you go, okay, this is actually real. This is pretty mad. This is pretty fun, And being a lot of my friends who are actors, the first thing they say is, what the question you just asked is, so what's it like to work with him? And it's always been, amazing. It's been like default answers. Amazing, great. I'm just enjoying the idea, just enjoying the whole thing, really taking it all in my stride and soaking it up like a sponge. I think that's the best thing to do. I'm only 24 years old, so the joy of having him there working in front of you and teaching you, especially with Shakespeare, is insane. It is insane, and it's something that will no doubt be taken with me throughout my life.
Yeah. He has quite a bit of experience with Shakespeare, but you also got a very experienced director in Rob Ashford. What's his approach been to directing? Well, it's intriguing to see the pair of them work. The balance is perfect between them. That Rob is about, I guess, the thematics of the play, the blocking, the movement, the thoughts, and Ken of the same, but then about the language. So the two are perfectly married together. To have two directors at the helm is a thing that I've never had before. Never in telly, never in film, never in theatre. There's always been, one man or one woman being at on the chair, the director's chair. And suddenly you have two, one of which who was acting opposite you. So there's that whole weird sort of blurred thing going on. But Rob is brilliant, and what Rob brings to the company is a sense of togetherness, I think, along with Ken. And we've been rehearsing now for coming up to the end of our fourth week, and we couldn't be more of a company, and I think that's garnered from the top. It comes from the top of the pyramid, from both of them. Yeah, when Kenneth Branagh and Rob Ashford came up to Manchester for the media launch, they both said they'd already been working on it. So I assume you came in at a much later stage. They seem to have been working on it for months.
Oh, I think so. I think it's one of them things, isn't it? I'm pretty sure Ken's had this in his head since he was a small boy.
Yes.
The whole play. I don't doubt that for a second. And it's fascinating to watch them both work. Yeah. So I guess the casting process did happen quite late. I found out, I think, a month before we started rehearsal, so unusual process. But yeah, we hit the ground running. There was no sitting around the table. There was no sort of discussing the text for a week. And not getting up our feet. Day one we did the read through and we were up on our feet. Text in hand or not. Learn your lines as quick as you can. Bring into the rehearsal room a sense of positivity and ideas, and we just continued on that run. And continued on that level of professionalism, I guess. And it's fascinating to watch them together.
That's an interesting insight from somebody who's observing quite a lot by the sound of it.
Well, yeah. Well, I don't know. It's that weird thing. Malcolm has an amazing start to the play, and then has the England scene, and then continues right towards the end. And there's just a weird moment that I haven't really experienced before. Is that I sort of get 50 minutes off in the middle. Yeah. I don't quite know what to do with myself. I know I'm trying to get a new good book, every day, getting prepared for the fact that I'm going to be sat in my dressing room or, for that 50 minutes or whatever. But yeah, it's such an ensemble feel anyway that the whole play gives that out. But I think we're all observing, watching Ken work is a treat.
Yeah. I suppose the downside of doing a production with such a short run is that you're going to be looking for a new job quite soon after. Have you got anything lined up for after this?
Sorry, I say laugh because, you try not to think about that. You try to just think of like job to job. But, we're all, I think all of the company are, auditioning and going up for certain stuff. It's that weird thing that I found is that last year I did a lot of telly. I did 2 big TV jobs for the BBC and enjoyed them thoroughly. And I'm now doing theatre. I think whatever happens is that whatever job you seem to be doing at that time, in whatever discipline that is, whether it be film, TV, or radio, or theatre or stage, that you get the bug for that particular discipline because you're doing it. Mm-hmm. So the idea that I was doing a lot of telly last year made me think, well, I want to continue doing telly, and then now I'm doing stage. My mindset has changed a bit, has altered to go, do you know what, I'd like to do another play, I'd like to tackle another Shakespeare if I could, because you have the bug for it, you have that itch to continue doing it. No, there's nothing concrete yet, but things are afoot, as they say.
Macbeth runs from the 5th to the 20th of July in Manchester, but on Saturday the 20th of July it's also relayed to a large screen at the car park near the Bridgewater Hall, for which tickets can also be purchased. And on the same day it's going to be broadcast to cinemas throughout the UK as part of the National Theatre's NT Live scheme, and so it can be seen on screen throughout the country. The Machine by Matt Charman is going to be performed at Upper Campfield Market at the bottom of Deansgate in Manchester. And I spoke to the actor Hadley Fraser, better known for his musical theatre performances, but in this case playing Garry Kasparov, the chess player, and I asked him to explain a bit about his role in the play.
Well, I'm playing Garry Kasparov, who's obviously one of the most recognisable names in chess, that's ever lived, and a lot of people have said that he's by far and away the most successful chess player who's ever sort of walked the planet, which is quite a daunting thing to try and take on, especially when my own chess skills are fairly average. I mean, average is probably too glowing a term for them, quite frankly. But there's I suppose a lot of conjecture as to who is probably the best player in history. But Kasparov is probably up there with one or two others. But
he was a bit of a character as well, though, wasn't he?
And still is. Yeah. I mean, he's definitely a product of his upbringing and a product of the place where he came out of. But, I think there's a bit of nature and nurture going on with him. And it sort of produced this extraordinary character who was sort of hard to define, really. But, I mean, even today, now that he's retired from chess, he's still very, very principled. He's still got his own sort of path in life that he walks. He goes and protests for democracy in Russia and has a sort of open and free Russian movement that he seems to be very, very passionately in tune with. And I think probably was from a very early age as well. But he just doesn't stop, it strikes me. He's one of those people who needs something always to fight against, needs something to oppose, and needs to feel like he has a purpose.
I suppose in particular with something like chess, but in sport as well, you need to be very focused and obsessed. He was quite obsessed with what he did, wasn't he?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And I think he's obviously got an inherent character within himself that's able to sort of sit in front of a chessboard for. Well, I mean, his first world title match was 5 months long against Karpov, and you sort of think, well, that doesn't sound so bad, sitting down at a table for 5 months. But I imagine actually the amount of concentration it must take it out of you mentally as well as physically. I mean, the chess ended up stopping that match, and it was a matter of some conjecture because they apparently sort of thought that the two players were mentally and physically, absolutely had nothing left to give. That probably wasn't the case. There's a little bit of controversy surrounding that, but you have to be obsessive. I mean, I think he was obsessive in terms of his preparation and obsessive in terms of the everything else in his life, but mostly obsessed with chess from an early age. And I think you have to be a champion like he was, and you have to be obsessive to the point of nothing else really existing.
And I think this showed with this particular event that's in the play with the machine, when he was actually playing against a machine, and he didn't just treat this as just a scientific experiment or just a piece of fluff. He was quite serious about winning, wasn't he?
Oh yeah, and he because he'd never lost a match. I think the notion of losing for Garry probably was and probably still is a very, very alien concept and not something that he ever really wants to countenance. I think he approached this match like he would any other. In terms of the chess, I mean, there was probably a bit more razzmatazz around it, and you know, occasionally he sort of had criticisms levelled at him that he was sort of taking chess into a little bit of a different spectrum. But I think that's probably just because he was in tune with the times and trying to update it. He really approached the match very, very seriously and wanted to win. You know, and he had beaten a version of before, and I think that gave him a lot of confidence. And he expected to win, as he always did.
Now, chess, though, it's not known as being a great spectator sport. There've been attempts to turn it into, well, Tim Rice famously has tried to turn it into a show with not entirely successful. But how has this been turned into something that's more interesting to watch?
Well, I suppose that is one of the challenges that we've faced. But I think, and I'm hoping that the sort of finished product that we've come up with will have on the edge of their seats, not only for the human drama that sort of unfolds, but also actually because of the drama around the chessboard. I mean, obviously, we're not just playing a game of chess in front of people. There are theatrical devices and movement and sound, and we only actually play one of the games, the final game of the match, through in its entirety. So the preceding games are sort of slightly more, well, we sort of term them expressionistic versions of chess. You know, people who've seen run-throughs and so on and so forth, I think are probably quite, and have said that they're quite amazed by how gripped they are purely from the chess. So, yeah, you're right. It's not sort of normal theatrical fare, but I think I'm hoping we've done a good job at marrying up the stakes, the high stakes with the match and with the personalities and their stories with the events unfolding on the board.
So what do we find out about your character other than when he's playing chess? What's the rest of the story? Well, I suppose the rest of the story surrounding the chess centres around Garry and Deep Blues creator Dr. Shu. And from my point of view, it shows how they both got to the point of this match becoming the sort of high point in their lives. And it sort of compares and contrasts what they both go through in order to become these people. For Garry, in order to become chess world champion, and for Shu, in order to build a chess machine that's possible of competing with a world champion. But obviously then there are knock-on effects and ramifications of that. What price the life that they lead, what price the obsessions that they have, you know, how does it knock on with their personal relationships? I mean, you see with Garry, you see the relationship with his mother, which was a very, very important relationship and still is, I think. I mean, you know, we always have to remember that Gary's still with us. I can't really talk about him as an historical figure. But you know, so I have quite a few scenes with Francesca Annis, who plays my mum, and you see. I mean, I think we've probably taken a little bit of license with that, and there is some conflict, I suppose, that we've shown between the pair of them. But you see just how important relationships like that are to the lives of these people who are just obsessive about things, and how it impacts on the people around them. You're talking about the human drama there, but you're actually performing it in a vast space at the Upper Camfield Market. How do you make the space work for this play?
Yeah, I mean that's I think quite an interesting challenge that we've sort of had to face. What it does do, the breadth of the space, is really make you feel like you're there for an event. I mean, a lot of the play sort of feels like you're watching the match itself unfold in a big studio in front of your very eyes, as if you're part of the TV audience. Hopefully what we'll achieve is also a sort of breadth of storytelling within the human drama itself. And, you know, they have sort of, we and our design team who are unbelievable in terms of sort of creating an intimate space within that huge space itself. I think there are moments where you feel like you're watching a sort of studio production with two people on stage, you know, having a relatively emotional scene, and you'll forget that you're in this giant market hall. I hope, anyway. You know, we'll see. But I think I think we've been able to change the space, and Mark Henderson, the lighting designer, is a bit of a genius, and Lucy Osborne, the designer, have really just, I think, nailed it in terms of making this a bit of an adaptable space.
And you're working with Josie Rourke, who is from this region. She's from Salford, but it's the first time she's directed in Manchester, apparently. So what's it been like working with Josie?
Yeah, I mean, Josie's very proud of her Salfordian roots, and you know, she'll laugh that she couldn't get arrested in Manchester before she came back down to London, and now this is, you know, welcoming her back, which I think she's delighted to be back. And it's the first time I've worked with Josie, and, you know, obviously her reputation preceded her, but I've had a wonderful time, and she understands the piece, I think, and understands the human drama implicitly. And as an actor, to work with a director like Josie is a real treat. She gives you space, but also leads us very, very well. And we've created a very happy company, and Josie's probably right at the heart of that. Matt Charman, our playwright, and it's a very, very harmonious group, and also very sort of free-thinking group as well, and she allows you the space to sort of create your own character, which is great.
Do you actually remember any of these events? You'd be quite young when this happened, wouldn't you?
Well, I don't recall watching it, but I do remember chess sort of having a bit more of an impact sort of around that time. I remember Nigel Short becoming something of a celebrity around that time over here, because he was our sort of leading light of a grandmaster. But I think I was only 17 when the piece was happening, and probably I don't think chess was high on my list of priorities back then. But I mean, I do sort of remember. I do sort of recall at the time, and obviously Garry Kasparov's name is something that sticks with me from that time.
Yeah, it was massive in the news at the time, though, wasn't it? It's amazing to think of chess being in the news now.
It is, yeah. I suppose it's occasionally you get these events that just pop up and capture the imagination. And I think IBM were very, very canny the way that, from their point of view, it was really a publicity stunt.
Yeah.
You know, or at least that's certainly the way that we portray it in the play. You know, it wasn't about the chess. It wasn't about the sort of scientific research. For them, it was a way of helping their stock price to rise and trying to regain a bit of the marketplace that they'd lost. And so, you know, it was a very, very fine tuned and engineered moment to be able to capture some imagination from around the world, and it absolutely did that. You know, yeah. I suppose from time to time you do get those events that somehow just manage to sort of overcome certain obstacles and thrust themselves into limelight without really any sort of understanding of why that's happening or any sort of precedent historically. And this was one of them. It's I'm trying to think of a modern day equivalent. I can't off the top of my head in terms of just chess, but you know, it's like I can't think of a modern day. I'm sure there are, but
it's like if suddenly darts hit the headlines or something like that, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Or squash suddenly becoming the number one sport. I mean, I suppose sometimes when you have personalities like that who sort of overtake their sport, sometimes that's, you know, they sort of destroy the sport and the popular consciousness of it. But I can't think of a modern parallel really that was as big as this. It's, you know, like the sort of London Games were last year. Yeah. But just from Garry and chess, it's amazing, really.
But it's not just a few days in Manchester, you're actually taking it to New York, and, well, the American relationship with Russia in 1997 was quite different, wasn't it? Do you think that'll have a different impact in New York?
Yeah, I do think it will have a different... well, I certainly think that the audience will get different things out of it, I think. Because the match itself took place in New York City as well, I feel like it's almost a sort of spiritual home of the piece, perhaps other than Moscow. But I suppose that 1997 was really the sort of one of the last days of the Cold War, I suppose, or at least, you know, that sense of the hangover of the Cold War was probably just beginning to disappear. But I think those thoughts were still held quite quite firmly from some people. And Garry, I think, had done quite a lot to try and break down those barriers. He had a very very advanced and progressive worldview. He talks in a few of his books about having been given a globe at the age of 7 by his father, and it was one of the most special presents he'd ever had. And he would sort of trace the roots of famous explorers across the globe and memorize the names of the countries and their capital cities and their populations. So I think that sort of reflects, even from an early age, the sort of global view that Garry had. And he wasn't a sort of closed-off Soviet monodirectional individual. He was very, very much sort of looking to open things up, and did court some controversy as a consequence. I think a lot of the sort of Soviet power people sort of mistrusted that from the start, and the fact that he wanted to go to America and wanted to open not only the sport up, but he'd say quite openly that he wanted to open the world up and open people's views up. And something like this, even though he ended up losing, and that was catastrophic for him, I think probably did more. It was more than the chess, and I don't think he necessarily realised that at the time. But it was, for him, more than the chess. It was a way of opening up the globe, I think, and sort of banishing that Cold War hangover.
He certainly covered a lot more of that globe than must have seemed possible to him when he was young in Soviet Russia.
Oh God, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the other thing is that I think Garry felt like an outsider even within his own country. He was from what was then quite, I'm imagining it still is, but it's not part of Soviet Russia anymore. I mean, he was from Baku in Azerbaijan, which was a very, very sort of remote outpost, and he was, half Armenian, half Jewish, and as a consequence, not quite the sort of blonde, blue-eyed sort of Russian ideal that I think they were after occasionally with their chess superstars. And so he felt, certainly from a young age, and especially when he was trying to make his way in the chess world, that even the Soviet chess authorities didn't want him to be a success. And as a consequence, I think must have felt very, very sidelined and very, very ostracized. And yeah, you're right. I think he would never have expected to become the sort of global traveller that he did, but especially facing that sort of internal opposition as well.
Yeah, just to take a different direction, you're most known probably for musical theatre, having played a very unusual pairing in Les Miserables, two very different characters at different stages in your career. But also you've got an album coming out as well, have you not?
Well, that's sort of in the pipeline, yeah. I mean, I suppose I quite like doing lots of different things, if I'm honest with you. And I've done a fair few musicals, but not more by accident than design, I suppose, and also as a product of singing. But one of those people who sort of likes to be able to challenge myself in a lot of different ways, and recording my own music is that's a high priority. I mean, I've been gigging for the past few years and writing for the past few years, and I was saying to Matt, our writer, last night, how much I was enjoying not singing for a bit, actually. And it is sometimes difficult. I'm not going to pick at the heartstrings too much or play the violin too much, but sometimes for musical theatre actors, it's hard to be seen for plays and slightly more, shall we say, straight theatre. So I'm very, very fortunate, I think, to have been given a chance by Josie and Matt to play this part, and I'm really enjoying it. I'd love to keep going with doing lots of different things. I suppose that's what I love to do.
Have you got anything else in the pipeline at the moment?
No, not at the moment. I mean, it's sort of head down with this one really, and then we'll take it to New York and see what happens there. Yeah, and the recording as well, really, and a couple of other little bits and bobs, but nothing that's really sort of massive at the moment, or that I can reveal, unfortunately.
The Machine by Matt Charman runs at Upper Campfield Market in Manchester from the 10th to the 21st of July. For more information about these productions and about the Manchester International Festival itself, see www.mif.co.uk. You've been listening to a podcast from British Theatre Guide. For more information, please visit britishtheatreguide.info.